All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. And so, next panel, finding your niche in sports, and Jeff's going to go ahead and moderate that. And so, Jeff, take it away.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Ron. So I'm really excited about this this particular topic. Ron and I, when we discussed the topics that we want to include in this event, this was one that really I felt strong about because I think for so many of the attendees here and college students mostly, you're trying to you want to work in sports. I was the same way. I knew I wanted to work in sports somewhere. Wasn't sure exactly where, but I wanted just to find out as much as I could about opportunities and what the job market looked like, how to get there, and so this is a really awesome group of people with interesting career journeys. So what I want to do is I'll introduce them, and when I do that, panelists, if you could just wave, let the students know who you are, and then I'll come back to you. And I just want you to tell them about your journey, sort of what you were thinking when you were where the students are today, and what did you visualize for yourself career-wise? Maybe it wasn't even sports necessarily at one time, but and then kind of how you got there. So we'll let you guys give sort of your own snapshots of your careers, and then we'll dive a little deeper into things. So Ashley Smith is the president of GSD Advisory, based in Charleston, South Carolina. She's a graduate of the University of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
She's a brand marketing guru. She's managed talent and athletes, and 25 years experience. I love the description of marketing executive and relationship cultivator. Love that, because sports is all about relationships. A great storyteller and creative thinker. So Ashley, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here. Jason Klein is the president and founder of 88 Marketing in Beverly Hills. He's involved in sponsorships, new media, digital, social, mobile, and sports marketing. Also 25 years experience in sports entertainment marketing. He was director of corporate partnerships for the Dodgers. I think his paths crossed with our guest coming up the next panel that I'll moderate, Dan Evans, who was the general manager, I think, when Jason was with the Dodgers. He was the director of sales and marketing of Pac-10 Properties, and also for California Speedway. And Nicholas, take note, Ramos, Jason is a graduate of UC Riverside, so go Highlanders. You got a fellow Highlander, Jason, here, that's very eager to find out as much as he can about getting into sports. One of my really good friends, just brings so much to the table every time I get a chance to connect with her, which isn't often enough, is Mary Lee Gilliland, who's the principal director, founder of Madison Sports Strategic Partnerships. She's done so many things, business leader in sports business, sports media. She teaches at Seattle U in their MBA Sport Entertainment Management program. She's taught at the University of Illinois as a adjunct. Just been involved in multimedia marketing for Learfield IMG College. She's also a founding board member of Women in Sports and Events, the Seattle chapter. Why Seattle? So welcome, Mary Lee. And really such an interesting, again, talking about finding your niche. Our last two panelists here. Tracy Specca-Ventura is the founder and president of Sports and the Arts, based in San Luis Obispo. Sports and the Arts curates art and photography collections for sports franchises. So putting in interesting displays of art, all kinds of art, photography, sculpture, large format graphics, within a stadium or arena. So to give that venue a different, interesting, artistic look. That's what Tracy's niche has turned out to be in sports. So Really interested in hearing more. They've had their latest collection was unveiled at the Chase Center in San Francisco, the new home of the Golden State Warriors. She's done partnerships with Green Bay Packers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Minnesota Vikings, San Francisco 49ers. It really goes on and on. So welcome, Tracy.
And Jeff, I'm sorry, if I could just chime in. Tracy was also part of our original Sports Industry Showcase back at, yeah, so I just wanted to put that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for returning letterman, Tracy. And I'm really excited to have one of my former students, Jennifer Duran, who's from the Bay Area, from San Jose. She's a senior sales executive, an image consultant in the sports division of Elevate Custom Clothing. So she got her bachelor's degree at USC, was in my sports business media class, and ended up getting her master's in strategic public relations. And so she's been now, I can't believe it's been like over 10 years, almost 15 experience and relationship building and accounting. And her area of interest was fashion. And so like with that interest, how does that translate into a career in sports? Well, you find a way to make fashion a central part of your life within sports. And Jennifer's done that. By the way, Jennifer celebrated a birthday on March 1st. So this is officially still her birthday week. So happy birthday, Jennifer, and thank you for joining us. So I'll go back and start with Ashley. And so Ashley, you've kind of heard the setup about finding your niche. When you were where the students are, when you back then where they are today, what were you thinking about where your niche might be in sports, and how did you get there?
Great question, Jeff. So when I was finishing up in Tuscaloosa, I actually wanted to go into the music business, which is what I did. I aspired to work with artists and kind of both learned the technical side of the music business. So I know how to mix an audio board, mix lights, etc. But then also working with artists on their PR and branding. And I did that for around 8 years prior to coming to the sports side, and joined ESPN after that through a couple of different projects. And I think for me, what I kind of have discovered over these last 20 years or so of working specifically in sports is working with athletes and talent is something I'm really passionate about. I think they're, you could argue kind of like creatives. They have somewhat unique personalities, and being able to understand those, help them see where opportunities might exist. Mm-hmm. I think I learned a lot of that working with rock bands, and have now applied that to working with the athletes. So that's kind of how I've kind of found my niche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's keeping an open mind and an open heart to possibilities. And there's so many of those within sports or entertainment.
Very much so. And I would say being open to when a situation or an opportunity presents itself, to explore it. Don't be so narrow-minded, especially when you're coming right out of college, that I want a job at the Lakers and that is my sole ambition. Hey, you know what? There's a whole host of opportunities that'll help you get to the Lakers.
So true.
So be open to those opportunities. And so, yeah, that's how I got to do what I'm exploring now and love it. I also love that we have both coast represented right now with San Luis Obispo and Charleston. So.
That's great. So Jason, you graduated from UC Riverside with a degree in psychology. What were you figuring life would look like for you in terms of a career, going back to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the students today are so far ahead of where I was.
Any of us, really, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking about a career in sports, I think I knew I didn't want to have a career in psychology, and I figured that out pretty early on. I took a marketing class my senior year, and it really intrigued me. I had a great professor, and I think influencing people's behavior and figuring out what makes people, loyal to a brand or to take action, and that really intrigued me. But in terms of sports, as I neared graduation, and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do, with my life, what kind of career am I going to have? The only thing that I could think of that I was really passionate about was sports. But I really knew very little about what kind of careers there were, at that time. This is going back a ways now, but, I thought if you weren't an athlete or a coach, you could possibly be an agent or, a trainer or something like that. So through a little networking, I was able to, there was an alumni from UC Riverside that was involved with the Summer Pro League, the NBA Summer Pro League. Mm-hmm. And they hired me for like a 2-month kind of internship. I think I made $500 for the 2 months, which covered my gas, my gas money. But while I was there, I was able to learn that, there was marketing, there was PR, there was, these different areas within the sports industry that you could work in. And then again, through more networking while I was there, I ended up at the Lakers as an intern in the sponsorship department. And so I was working with brands and, learning about, how they are involved with the sports world. And then that led to an opportunity at an agency where I got exposed to, a lot of different properties on behalf of brands and seeing how that whole world worked. So at the same time, I was also able to figure out, I don't think I want to go into PR. I don't think I want to be an agent. I don't think I was able to kind of eliminate the things that I knew I didn't want to do. But again, I was really attracted to the marketing side. So that's kind of what got me started. And then, while I was at the agency, that led to an opportunity to move over to the property side again, but in a sales role. And I didn't set out wanting to necessarily be a salesperson and sell sponsorships. But as I started to learn more about the industry and to get exposed to more things, it quickly dawned on me that if I wanted to move up, if I was able to generate revenue, I would make more money myself. And then 2, I would have more upward mobility. And that's what kind of had me down that path. And then the part of it that I really loved was, to me, I was selling something that I was passionate about. So I never saw myself as someone that could just sell anything. And I think there are people out there that could sell anything. I always saw myself as a marketer, and I really loved the marketing aspect of it and coming up with creative solutions for brands. And so that kind of took me down my path, and that's what took me down that sponsorship road.
And interesting, Jason, that you can trace it back to that opportunity where you made $500 over a couple of months with the NBA Summer League, as really opening your eyes to possibilities. So again, what seems like this modest opportunity, and the Summer League resonates with me because the guys that own it now, Albert Hall, Warren Legary, I work with them in the sports business classroom program to looking at opportunities, and like we're doing with this event, trying to open the eyes and help people get into sports. By taking that, the world kind of opened up for you. So that there's a great takeaway there, I think, on looking at something that maybe didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but you said yes to look at what could be there.
Yeah, and just to add to that, my job that they assigned to me was selling the T-shirts. I was selling the merchandise. Yeah. So it wasn't even really like it was something that I could have done in high school or at any point, but I was in charge of the merchandise. But while I was there, they had a press room, a media room, and they didn't have any food. And so I said to my boss, I said, hey, if I can find someone to provide food for the media room, is that cool? And he's like, yeah, go ahead, try. So I found this local sports bar that agreed to give us food in exchange for some advertising at the games. And I essentially put together a sponsorship deal without really knowing that that's what I was doing. But my job was to sell shirts, but I was able to get food for the media room, which everybody loved. So I was just kind of figured that out as I was going.
That's such a great example. And it's part of what I refer to often as, what is your value add? what kind of value can you bring to any job or opportunity? And that was a great value add, just something that seemingly, is small as that, but that's something that you did, you thought of, and you made it happen. So that's great examples. Mary Lee, welcome.
Thank
Tell us,
you.
I neglected to mention Mary Lee is a proud USC grad and been a guest in my class a number of times. And again, as I said, I don't see her often enough. So when you think about your journey, which has been so extensive, what comes to your mind when you look back at what you were thinking when you were in your student days at USC?
Well, I came from the generation of just pure hustle. And I think I'm actually very hopeful with our high school students and our college students as our future leaders in the industry. I think you're going to be a little smarter than me. I do think hard work is important, but I think you can strategically plan out what type of life you want and how you want, what you want for your life, and then what type of career will support that. But back to your question specifically, Jeff, I would say, I just, back to my hustle, I tried to choose jobs that really I would be passionate about going in, and then I would do everything I could to be the very best in that job, no matter what it was, even if it wasn't what I ultimately wanted. And I think that's important. If some of you are working right now, maybe summer jobs that you have lined up, and if you work at a Starbucks, for example, be the very best worker at Starbucks, and you will see opportunities. I've hired people. I've hired somebody out of a parking garage because he had a great attitude, and he was working super hard and he was happy with what he was doing, and I knew he didn't want to ultimately be in a parking garage. But if you are the best that you can be, I think that's really, really important. The other thing is I was really fortunate. One of my first professional jobs after all of my odds and ends jobs was working for a corporation, and our CEO wanted a football team for the Carolinas. And so I got to work on an NFL project really early in my career. And we back then didn't have any kind of roadmap. And so, my contact at the league office was Roger Goodell, who was not even a vice president yet. And we were trying to figure out every week, okay, what do we need to do in the Carolinas to basically sell this to the owners to get their votes on getting a football team. And it took us 7.5 years, about 50 million that we spent on it, which these days probably most ownership groups will spend a little more than that. But it was really a marketing project, a marketing communications project on trying to put together a story, right, to tell that would show these owners that the Carolinas could support a successful NFL team. And so I really learned a lot from that experience. And then I built my career, the rest of my career, on marketing, multimedia marketing, once we had cell phones and we had the wild west of the internet. And marketing grew and adapted and evolved and moved into something totally different, which we all know today is social media, and as well as traditional marketing and advertising. And so I learned over the years all about that, and also how to generate revenue through that. And I think, Jason mentioned revenue. It's really important, no matter what your job is, to understand in the business how to generate revenue. How do the Lakers generate revenue? How does the National Football League generate revenue? It's good. How does a minor league baseball team generate revenue? It's really good to understand that. And then, again, you'll find your way based on where your talent is or where your interests, your passions are. But understanding the business is extremely important, so you can figure out what your path will be to fit within that business.
I'm so glad, Mary Lee, you mentioned about the revenue component, because I brought this up yesterday. Whenever Casey Wasserman's in my class, which was a couple of weeks ago, I always bring up sales, because he says, you can all, if you have sales experience, it can transfer to anything. So if you get an opportunity to be in sales, like, he wants to know in an interview, you don't want to hear how passionate you are about sports or how hard you work, because the assumption is everybody works hard. That should be part of your foundation, not needing to point it out, just part of who you are, your passion for sports. But he wants to know, how can you make my company more successful?
Right.
How can you make us, get where we want to get to? Like, why would hiring you be a good move for us? Not why this is a great job for you. We get that. You're applying for it. But what separates you? So I'm glad you brought up the idea of thinking of revenue, because if you go in thinking, these are a few thoughts I have that might be revenue generating thoughts like that, I think that puts you a step ahead.
And I'll just say one other thing if I can. When Heidi Uberoth, so you guys can Google Heidi Uberoth so you know who she was incredible in building the NBA globally. And also one of the very few women, especially in her time, that was at that level in professional sports. And when she left the NBA, she stepped down voluntarily. She left the NBA and was asked, if you could only give one piece of advice, what would it be? And she said, I want every young person getting into sports to understand and participate in some way in developing revenue. So it's really, really important.
Yeah, that's great. Tracy, I am so excited to talk to you about what you do, because as somebody that's passionate about the arts, as my mother was, a drama major in college, and I'm a longtime season ticket holder to the Amundsen Theater, downtown LA, love live theater and miss it terribly. So the arts has always resonated with me, and how you've taken a passion for that and combined it with sports. I'd love to have you tell, the students just, what your vision was for yourself and the way for you to combine those two passions of yours.
Well, it started with, I went to LA and I'm playing tennis for Cal State Northridge. And I always wanted to be an actress, but I was always the best friend, never the young ingenue. And it just didn't happen. And I came from a sports background. So I nannied for good friends of ours, Pete Rose, for a summer. It was actually the year he got kicked out of baseball.
Wow.
And came back to college my second year. And in Sherman Oaks, there was a sports art gallery. And it was not typical. It was just different. And I walked in and I said to the lady there, sophomore in college, I don't know anything about art. I know a lot about sports and I need a job. And she said, all right, you're hired. And we originally were from Philadelphia. So I was a huge hockey fan, and Gretzky had come to LA the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And she hired me in November. And in January, I organized our first art opening with the Kings. And she said, do you think this is going to be a success? I'm like, you have Wayne Gretzky. Of course this is going to be a success.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting at the gallery, the people that bought the artwork were the producers, the directors, the actors, all from the entertainment side, because they fantasized being athletes in the sports world. And all the athletes loved hanging out with the entertainers because it was what they wanted to do, but they were the athletes. So I was 19 at the time, ended up running the gallery. And when it closed, one of the artists, and it's funny, Jason, I see behind you, Stephen Holland, we started his career in that gallery. One of the artists approached me and said, I want you to be my agent. And I said, no, we're friends. Like, money makes things weird. She's like, you're going to make me money. I trust you. Let's do this. And so we started working with the teams doing charity fundraisers. We donate paintings. They do them at silent auctions, live auctions. And we started just getting our feet in the door. And I kept saying, back to that revenue, how does this benefit the team and get you exposure? So we did this for a couple of years. And in 2007, just through the connections, we started working with the Kings and becoming friends. And when you work hard and you're on time and you deliver what you say you're going to deliver, people like you and they love art because it's so visual. And we weren't selling stuff that was not cool and interesting. It was really well done. So I was friends with Larry Robinson, who was the Kings coach.
Yeah.
When we knew him. He was an equestrian guy. So he bought all these paintings of equestrian horses. And he was the assistant coach of the New Jersey Devils. And he said, they're building a new stadium, a new arena. You should reach out to the ownership. And it was Friday. I sent an email, and Monday at 6 a.m., I get a phone call. How soon can you come out to New Jersey? We're opening this venue, and we want you to do the walls. And I was 25 at the time. I was young. And I go into this meeting. I think we're going to sell like 3 paintings. And he says, you have my whole arena. I trust you. Get your proposal. Get out of here. And I said, wait a second. We're not talking $30,000 for these paintings. We're talking $1 million. And it was it came out of my mouth. And now, you know, we're doing huge projects that I look back at that. And I did that entire state or arena by myself in 4 months. And I left that meeting and I called a girlfriend that we were working with the Phillies. We were doing a piece with Chase Utley at the time. And I said, Michelle, what do I do? And she says, well, you've run art galleries. Just think it's a big gallery space that you're going to decorate. So I did the first arena by myself. And then one of the owners was part owners of the Yankees. And he was a great guy, Mike Gilfillan. And he said, I want to get you a meeting with the Yankees. They're building the new Yankee Stadium. Mm-hmm. And we went back and forth with the Yankees for about 1.5 years, and they just wanted photography. And when we went in and did it, in 3 months, again, like it was just the Wild West. But I had all these vendors and these associates that I'd worked with over the years. You know, Jason, when you were the Dodgers, Andy Bernstein, and also Mary Lee, you would know Andy too from the NBA. And anyhow, I had these contacts, so I put really good artisans together, and Yankee Stadium opened the doors for us. It blew it out of the water because we did something there that nobody had done before. And my big fight, it was the 20 years of overnight success, was they have these venues and you have a captive audience and no one thinks about the walls. You have direct marketing tying into the revenue with the Chase Center and the Warriors. We brokered a deal with Adobe, and there was a sponsorship deal that Adobe paid for part of the art collection. So now we've really started, and we would do product and things out of the art collection as well, but it's really grown into this experience now that people expect it. When you go into these venues and the ticket prices are so high, what can you offer the fans in this moment? And you might have one of the best acknowledgements was in that first building in New Jersey, a woman in one of the club spaces was in front. We go to the libraries and Chamber of Commerce and all these different places, newspapers, to source all these imagery that haven't been seen before. And this woman in between second and third period is standing in front of a vintage baseball photo from Newark, where the arena is, and she's sobbing in her little hockey jersey. And one of the ushers comes over to her and says, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "That's my father. And I've never seen a picture of him playing baseball before." Wow. So we really can touch through the arts. And that's what I think is really important in sports. It's the agony, the ecstasy. There's so much passion and drive, and you can really capture that and do storytelling. And that's basically what we do.
And it's fantastic. I just love how you've done this, Tracy, the arts and sports and made it happen. Two things that jump out of venues that just popped into my mind. When UCLA did its renovation of Pauley Pavilion, all of a sudden they went from just where the concourse was nothing more than a place to get concessions, go to the restrooms. It's now, if you walk around, each there's displays that go throughout that concourse now, including a recreation of John Wooden's living room, a place that I was fortunate enough to spend many hours. And you could they've recreated the room to a T. And now you walk in there, and like my trips there now are completely different, because I look forward to seeing a little bit about the history of the program that before the renovation was about 6, 7, 8 years ago, didn't exist. Most storied program in college basketball history, there wasn't anything there that would let you know that there was this link to history. And the other arena that jumps out in that regard is Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. That is the story of Indiana basketball. When you go around, it's not just the Pacers, but high school, college, and the NBA. So it's like a museum to Indiana basketball. And I just thought of those because the power of art within a venue is so strong.
And you can tie in with the Hall of Fames, and definitely with, you know, the collegiate, the athletes that have come out to collegiate that went into the minor league baseball. You can celebrate that there. Then you go into the pros. There's so much storytelling and history. And that's what I think inspires people. You want to inspire people. And at Yankee Stadium, people love the old images of the people in the old hats and how they used to dress to go to the ball game. Like that nostalgia really pulls on the heartstring.
Yeah, no doubt.
And
So,
we do a lot of things for you kids out there. How do you get in sports that you're not going to be LeBron James? Well, what if you're a great artist? What if you want to depict these people in a different way? So when we hire our talent to come into our collections, we hire self-taught artists, artists that have gone through great colleges, and high-end artists, and they all become this tapestry. It doesn't matter how old you are. If the work is great and powerful and pulls you in, we love to bring in the communities. We love to bring in up and coming artists. And it's a really great way also to bring a lot of women in these male dominated sports facilities, because we can bring in some really fabulous women artists. So there's all different ways and different diversities and all different things that we can bring in as this package to the teams. And it's really exciting, and they really get behind it and celebrate it. There's always a big art opening at the new venues that we come into, and people in the community really want to celebrate these artists.
yeah, Micah Johnson.
And then
I
the
don't know if
athletes want to be the artists.
I don't know if you've seen Micah
get
Johnson's
excited.
work, but the Micah Johnson was a Dodger for a few years, not a significant, I mean, like kind of a utility player, but now he has a talent for art, and he has his paintings are on display at a gallery in downtown LA. Micah Johnson, if you guys are interested, Google that name.
Yeah, and it's funny because I meet artists and someone will recommend, and I might not be able to use him on one project. There's a guy I want to use who's called Kikasso, and he paints cleats and shoes. And I can see this big installation in a venue of all the sneakers, and get Nike to sponsor it or whoever. So it's finding the right place to put the art, but creating it.
Yeah. So birthday girl Jennifer, welcome. And as you were listening to the other panelists about finding their niche, can we go back to you sitting in my class on Wednesday nights thinking about where your niche was going to be and how you got from there to where you are now, and tell everybody kind of what the essence of what your work is about.
So the essence of what my work is about now is I design custom bespoke menswear for professional baseball, football, and hockey players. So everything they wear off the field, off the ice, from tuxedos and formal wear for their weddings and red carpet type events, to just casual wear and suits that they're wearing on the team plane. A lot of teams still have dress codes where they need to dress up when they're walking into the stadium or the arena. So I take care of all of that, and all of that's custom made here in Los Angeles, old world tailoring, and all of that kind of thing. So it's a really unique niche for sure, but by no means was that what I thought I was going to go into career-wise when I was sitting in your class. I knew I wanted to work in sports at SC, so I took every possible sports-related elective that I could. I seized on any sports internship that I could. I thought maybe I would go and do sports reporting, so I did a turn at Fox Sports. Then I thought maybe the PR and marketing angle, so I did a few different PR related sports internships. I worked for Weber Shandwick in London one summer on the city of Paris's bid for the 2020 Olympics, which the 2012 Olympics. They obviously didn't get to win, but it was really cool to be able to work on a campaign like that and see, okay, maybe I thought I was going to work in more traditional football, baseball, basketball, but I got to kind of see it, the Olympic side of things. So I tried any and everything that I possibly could to get a taste of sports and help me kind of narrow down what my niche was going to be. But then just the universe works in mysterious ways. What ended up bringing me back to the job I have now was something totally unrelated to sports. All the while when I was in college, I worked at Nordstrom in the men's suits department. Going back to when I was 16, every summer when I went home, every Christmas break, I worked in the men's department. And so similar to saying earlier what Mary Lee said, you know, if you're at Starbucks, be the best Starbucks worker you can be. You just never know where life is going to take you. Having that fashion background is what ended up getting me in the door at the company I work for now. One of my sorority sisters knew someone at the company, knew I wanted to work in sports, knew I'd been working at Nordstrom. And she's like, this just kind of sounds like the right fit for you. And I sent them my resume. I was still in my cap and gown on graduation day when they emailed me setting up an interview for that Monday, and they hired me on the spot. And that was 15 years ago now. And I've been doing it all the while. So I guess my advice would just be to constantly be trying whatever opportunities are available to you. I think someone suggested volunteering. I think that's a great opportunity.
Great.
You know, I used to volunteer for your Pete Newell Challenge, or I volunteered for the Special Olympics a few times. Even if it's something that doesn't seem directly related to sports, you don't know how you're going to be able to circle back and kind of find the sports angle there. And never stop networking. You don't know the people you know now. You might think, I don't really know anyone in sports. I don't know anybody that could make these introductions for me. But you really don't know. If you start digging into your network and asking people, hey, is there anyone you could introduce me to? It's amazing who you'll find that actually connected in some way that can be helpful.
It's so true. It's so true. And it's so much a matter of taking advantage of whatever opportunity comes along, making the best of it. You know, you did that, and you know, you're going to meet people. You never know who it's going to be along the way, somebody that you meet and maybe years later you circle back with. It's a smaller world in sports, and people realize. Ashley, I saw you nodding your head. Anything you wanted to add just about that aspect of networking or anything else?
No, I think Jennifer and Mary Lee were both spot on with that. And you think of that role like, oh, I'm just a sales associate, or, oh, I'm just a barista at Starbucks. But what that's showing to a potential hiring manager is that you can work well in a team. You can work in a fast-paced environment. You're good with clients. Like, you don't sell suits at Nordstrom's unless you know how to talk to someone. And I think sometimes in school, you know, maybe we get really hyper-focused on internships, but don't discount some of those other roles that you have outside of your direct line of work. Those to a hiring manager are equally important. And I think Mary Ann mentioned this, or Mary Lee, I apologize. The hustle aspect, if I see that you're waiting tables in a restaurant and you're hustling, like, that tells me a lot about a potential team member for me.
Yeah, no question. Jason, you have any thoughts too about that? Expanding that a little bit, you know, just the networking and availing yourself of opportunities. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know,
by the way, I love your picture of your painting.
Thank you. I have another one on the other wall with Kirk Gibson. So
that's great.
Yeah, you know, I often tell young people who are trying to get into sports that the toughest part is just getting your foot in the door. But once you get your foot in the door, then it is just about working hard and providing value and finding your niche, like in that world. But through networking and participating in things like this, informational interviews. I mean, most people who have established themselves and who have made it in a career, I find, are willing to talk to young people who are trying to get in, or trying to learn more about it. And in today's world with LinkedIn and the ability to find out who you might be connected to, it's such a powerful tool. So, I mean, to me, LinkedIn is a huge thing. You know, getting referrals is, you know, people see job postings all the time. I think every job I've ever gotten ended up coming through a referral, you know, and so I always tell people, don't ignore those job postings when you see them, you know, send in your resume and that type of thing. But the job you're going to end up getting is through networking and through getting a referral. And so always kind of focus on that. How can I get a referral? How can I network to get to this place where I want to be, or to get in the door? And then the other little just piece of advice that might be hard to focus on now, because I think most of these people are trying to get their foot in the door right now. But once you do, and when I look back on my career, I always feel like I wasted a lot of energy worrying about my title. and worrying about, you know, I had a quick growth in the beginning. I think I was a director by the time I was 25 or 26, and I was a vice president by the time I was 30 or in my early 30s. But when I was a director, I was so focused on becoming a vice president, and I thought, you know, and it took away from what I was doing. And then when I finally became a vice president, no one cared at all that I was a vice president. It didn't make any difference.
Right,
It didn't mean anything. And then you realize that, you know, at one company, being a manager is the same as being a vice president at another company.
Right.
And it really meant nothing. And so what I always like to tell people to focus on is focus on what you're doing. Do you enjoy what you're doing? Do you like and respect the people that you're working with and working for? Do you feel like you're growing? You know, earning a good living is important. So, you know, that's important, you know, how much money you're making and that type of thing. Early on, I don't think it's as important. Early on, it's all about getting experience and figuring out what you want to do and where you want to go. But don't get hung up on titles. That's just another little thing I tell people. But
it's a great piece of advice. And also, you know, a reminder about LinkedIn. I think most of the students seem like they're pretty plugged into that, but it's such a great way. And now is such a good time too, to what I call the, you know, to reach out and try to find those, what I call the virtual cups of coffee, like see if somebody is going to be willing to take a few minutes. And, you know, you may not get a perfect score in people that you reach out to and respond, but there'll be far more that will be willing than not to, in my opinion. Take some time.
We're
kind of all stuck at home here. So, you know, now's the time to do this. Yeah.
And I apologize if someone's already mentioned this in your earlier sessions, but the one little thing about LinkedIn that I'll share is don't just send the blind automated invite. You know, you need to put some kind of personal note with the invite, and even if it's still a cold, you know, invite, but it's, hey, I'm a student. I'm trying to learn more about the sports industry. You know, I'd love to connect with you. Just something, because if it's just the blind one, I stopped accepting those years ago. You know, and early on, I just accepted everything, and then I realized I had all these people in my profile that I had no idea who they were.
Right.
And so always personalize it, because you have a much better chance of connecting with someone if you do that.
It's a great suggestion.
I would just
go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say, I would echo what Jason said. Don't blind. I know for me personally, and Jeff, I laughed because you said it to me. A simple roll tide to me gets you way further along in the conversation. Just acknowledging that you actually looked at my profile. I would say part 2 of that, and this is just a rule of thumb for me, I don't accept LinkedIn requests until I verbally speak to the student. And part of that is I want a gut check. Hey, you know what? I'm opening the door for you to my entire Rolodex. And everybody has their own kind of rules of engagement on that. I happily do those virtual informational interviews, and then we'll happily accept you. But I want to talk to you first and just find out, hey, what are you really looking for? And I encourage students, you know, the reality is, given everything that's happened, especially in the sports world, it is a buyer's market. And so to really take the time when you're given an opportunity with a relationship, reach out, have the meeting, get the LinkedIn request, but very important, send the thank you note. Yeah. This person took time to meet with you. A 3-sentence email thank you note goes a long way when they see a job opportunity come up in a month or 2 years. They're going to remember that. And I think that is an art that has been lost a little bit. And I know with my mentees at Bama, and it's something that I really stress. It distinguishes you amongst a pool of 50 people or more.
Yeah, it's so true. It shouldn't be considered old school. Sometimes it is, but it's a great way to
and
make the connection.
Here's a great example. There was a kid who graduated in Florida with sports business and wanted to get into sponsorship. And I reached out to the VP of marketing for the Warriors, and he also had a meeting with the Raiders, wanted the Raiders, and he flaked on my 2 different meetings the VP of sponsorship of the Warriors set up with this kid. And I get a personal email from my friend at the Warriors and said, look, I just want you to know I'm cutting bait on him. He hasn't followed up and he's not the degree of kid that you expressed he was. And I felt like such a jerk. And I put myself out there for this kid and he didn't follow up and he didn't get the job at the Raiders. And now he's got a stain on him with the Warriors, and people in the business know people in the business. And the one thing that I think is very important in sports is you don't burn bridges, because somebody who works in for one team is going to go to a different team and then a different team, and they can also open doors for you through that connection. So, you know, make sure you follow through. And like Ashley said, the follow-up note is very important. And the kids these days, I sound so old, but I'm not, but it's all through internet. Mail a handwritten thank you note. And it's so, because it's so rare, it's really going to make you stand out.
It's going to help you. That's a separator is how I call things like that. Jennifer, I saw you nodding. Anything you wanted to add to about that?
Definitely the thank you note. And I think going old school and analog and doing a handwritten thank you note it always works. People are thrilled by it. So much of my business is building up relationships and maintaining those relationships as people's titles change. And I make it a point every year after spring training, you know, wraps up, I write a handwritten thank you note to each of the clubhouse managers. Hey, thanks for taking the time to let me set up in the equipment room. It's always great seeing you. And you can even take it a little step further, and when you see it's someone's birthday, send them a birthday note or shoot them a message if you see that their wife is expecting, or just always focusing on the relationship, not, hey, what can you do for me? I'm reaching out because I need to get in front of a player today. Remember that we're all people, we're all humans, and try and keep that human connection, and it goes a really long way. Because at least for someone like me, there are other clothing companies out there, there are other reps. How do I differentiate myself from them? So that if you only have room for one tailor to come to the field this spring, I want to be that tailor. So how do I kind of keep my head above the fray so that you remember me and remember that we have not only a professional relationship, but a personal relationship? I really do think it goes a long way.
That's good advice. Mary Lee, did you have thoughts about that as well?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to say, I'm going to get kind of back to that niche and finding your niche. And right now you guys are probably exploring what's out there in the sports industry. What type of positions are there? And there are so many job descriptions. If you go to LinkedIn or you go to Indeed, or even if you just Google job descriptions or job postings, because the job descriptions are basically what the job postings are, and they have all the details of the positions. So for example, if you look at a marketing coordinator at the Los Angeles Dodgers, right? You'll be able to see everything that marketing coordinator does at the Dodgers. And so while you're planning your classes that you're going to take in college, or you're even maybe you've all decided on what college you're going to go to, but while you're trying to plan maybe where you volunteer or what skills you want to learn online, it's good to see what people do in those jobs so that you can start to be specific about the things that you want to learn. And you may learn something. You may see social media, right? Or Adobe, you need Adobe, and you get into Adobe and you're like, wow, I don't really enjoy this. Or maybe you do, and you end up getting into graphic design and you take it further and you take a couple more classes, because there are classes online as well as in school. So that's one thing you can do. And then it also can help you prepare for when you do meet professionals. So when you're reaching out to meet people and have coffee, like Jeff said, make sure you're prepared. Send them your resume ahead of time, or send them a little, like a summary of what you've done thus far and what you're interested in. And then when you meet with them, have questions ready. And if this person is, say, a vice president of sponsorship sales, have questions ready based on what somebody in sponsorship sales does. And again, you can write at your fingertips. We didn't have any of this when I was your age. You know, you can look at what somebody that's a VP of sponsorship sales does. And if you have some of those questions ready and you've actually prepared, you've almost like when you're going to speak and present, you prepare and you practice. Practicing is really good so that you're very comfortable when the actual call or Zoom video chat occurs. And then the only other thing I would say is, you know, somebody mentioned volunteering. Volunteering is so valuable. And I'll give you an example. So we just launched Wise Seattle last year in January, but we worked for it to build it for a year prior to launching it. And then when we launched it, we put our board together and all of our committees together, and each committee is a specific. So we have marketing, we have programming, which is events, we have finance, we have partnerships, etc., mentorship. And we brought in people that are students to actually serve on those committees. So we have a diversity and inclusion committee, and we got students that were interested in studying about diversity and inclusion. And that's certainly a profession within our industry. Yeah. So volunteering it can be so valuable. And even if you're working in a job that's not in sports, you can still be in sports by way of volunteering.
That's such a good point. Ron, do we have time? Can I take one question before we wrap?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so Mayan, welcome, one of my students. So happy to see you here again.
How's it going, everybody? I appreciate you guys really taking the time today. Jeff, Ron, this is incredible. But I had really two questions. One quickly regarding thank you notes. Just logistically, like where do you go to find where to send a thank you note? Like, do you go to send it just to their building when they're not in the office? Or do you try to find, like, is it inappropriate to send it to their personal homes if they have like those addresses available? And then my second question was also for Jason. What made you decide to start your own firm for 88 Marketing after, working for the Dodgers and other things? And what does 88 Marketing do?
Let me just jump in just for a second, because I think that's a really relevant question about thank you notes, especially during COVID, like where people aren't going into the office necessarily. So if you send it to an office, are you sure it's going to get there? Any help there would be appreciative. Yep.
In my experience, at least the teams are all still going in. So it's less frequent, but they are going in and they are checking mail. And then even with offices, I work with a few agents and marketing people, and they still have someone coming in and collecting mail, maybe on a once a month type basis. So it might take longer to get to them, but it is getting to them. It depends on the relationship you have with the person too. If it's someone where you feel comfortable enough to ask them, hey, I wanted to send you something, what's the best address? And they are comfortable giving you their home address, I think that's fine. But in general, just send it, it will get to them eventually. It might take a little longer because they're not coming in as often, but it does get to them. Because I've had people thanking me for Christmas cards that I sent to various offices and stadiums. And maybe I didn't get the thank you, for the card text until January or February, but they did eventually get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and thanks for asking the question. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about chasing those titles. I spent the first 15 years or so in my career on the property side, mostly selling sponsorships. So, California Speedway or Auto Club Speedway, Dodgers, MLB. And I kind of reached a crossroads in my career. And again, we're all a little bit older than you guys, but at some point in your life, there's that work-life balance, right? And when I first started off in my career, I think my goal was I wanted to be president of the team. That was my goal. I wanted to work my way up and be president of some sports team. And then throughout my career, I realized and saw that my peers and the people that I worked for had to move around the country, chasing those jobs. Moving 3 or 4 times, moving their families back and forth. And I got to that point in my career where I was starting a family and I had an opportunity to move to Texas to get another title, right? To bump up that ladder. And my wife and I went and visited and we're like, do we want to move to Texas right now for this job? And we came to the conclusion that we didn't. And so I decided at that point to start my own company. And a lot of it was to have the autonomy and to have the control over my career and be my own boss. And it was something that I had always had that little bug, but early in my career, I felt like I didn't have enough experience yet. Who was going to take me seriously as a consultant or as an agency or as an expert, if I'd only been doing it for 5 years kind of thing. But I was at that point where I felt like, okay, I've been doing this long enough. I have enough relationships, enough experience that I'm willing to go out on my own and try that. And so at 88 Marketing, we've been around now for just a little over 10 years. And I kind of went to the other side of the table and back to where I was like very early on in my career. But now instead of selling sponsorships, I work with brands, helping them basically buy their sponsorships and manage their sponsorships. And we help with their strategy. We help putting the deals together and negotiating them, and then helping kind of on the day-to-day management of those sponsorships. And my big client that we've been with for the last 7 or 8 years is Alaska Airlines in Seattle. So I spend a lot of time up in Seattle. When this is all over, we'll have to grab coffee next time I'm up there. And we work with Seattle U actually. So yeah, it's been great. You know, it's not for everybody, but you know, and I always felt like if that president of a team came rolling through when my son's older and doesn't want to hang out with me anymore, then maybe I'll go back into that world. But yeah, it was that work-life balance that really was the driving force behind it.
It's so important. Coach Wooden says the two most important words in the English language are love and balance. And I think that's great. You guys, this has been so insightful. I'm telling you, this is just like pulling behind and getting a chance to go behind the scenes and get your insights. It's been terrific. I know the students feel the same way. So Ashley, Jason, Jennifer, Mary Lee, and Tracy, thank you for taking time to do this. This has been great. So appreciative of you guys. You rock.
Thanks so much, Jeff. It's always great with you.
Thank you.
All right,
Ron,
Jeff.
all yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for another fantastic job. I'm taking notes, learning from you for my interviews. And panelists, thank you so much for investing the time to spend with our students today.